The two friends, once upon a time, in a little village. There were two best friends named Milo and Rotzi. Milo had skin as dark as the night, and Rotzi had skin as pale as milk. They looked very different, but they didn't care. They loved to laugh, play, and share stories together. But the people in their village were not so kind. Look at those two. Some would say, one looks like a shadow, and the other looks like a ghost. Others would laugh and whisper, they look like night and day walking together. Milo and Rotzi heard the teasing every day, but they didn't let it ruin their friendship. Instead, they found ways to make each other laugh. One day, Rotzi said, if I'm a ghost, then you're my shadow. Wherever I go, you have to follow me. Milo laughed and replied, fine, but if I'm a shadow, I can make you look super cool, like a hero. He struck a funny pose, and Rotzi giggled so hard that he almost fell over. One afternoon, the two friends decided to visit the river. They loved the cool water and the shiny pebbles on the riverbank. While they were playing, a group of kids from the village showed up. The kids began pointing and laughing. Hey, ghost and shadow, are you trying to scare the fish? Milo looked at Rotzi and whispered, let's scare them instead. Rotzi grinned. What are you planning? One of the kids asked, still laughing. But before they could say more, Milo and Rotzi jumped up and began waving their arms wildly. Whoa, we're a ghost shadow team, they howled. The kids screamed and ran away, thinking Milo and Rotzi were serious. Once they were gone, the two friends fell to the ground laughing so hard that their sides hurt. I guess we're pretty scary together, Rotzi said. Yes, Milo replied, but also awesome. The sun was starting to set, and the two friends sat quietly by the river, watching the colors of the sky change. It reminded them of how different they looked, yet how perfect they were together. Just then, something strange happened. A small, glowing bird flew down from the sky and landed right between Milo and Rotzi. Its feathers shimmered with all the colors of the rainbow, and it chirped softly, like it was trying to speak. Milo blinked. Is that a magic bird? Rotzi leaned closer. It must be. Look how it's glowing. I've never seen anything like it. The bird tilted its tiny head, staring at them with bright, curious eyes. Then, to their surprise, it spoke. Milo and Rotzi, it said in a sweet, musical voice, you are special. Your friendship is stronger than any teasing or laughter. The boys looked at each other, stunned. How do you know our names? Milo asked. The bird chuckled. I've been watching you. You're different, but that's what makes you powerful. I have a task for you. Rotzi's eyes grew wide. A task? What kind of task? The bird spread its glowing wings and hopped closer. Far from here, there is a village where people have forgotten how to laugh. They've lost their joy. You too, with your laughter and friendship, must bring it back. Milo scratched his head. How can we do that? We're just two kids. You'll see, said the bird. You have something special inside you. But first, you'll need to find the 3 lost feathers of joy. Each one will teach you an important lesson. Lost feathers? Rotzi asked. Where do we find them? The bird flapped its wings, and a gentle breeze swirled around them. The first feather is hidden in the deepest part of this forest. It's guarded by something very big, but don't be afraid. Your friendship will guide you. Before Milo and Rotzi could ask more questions, the bird rose into the air. Good luck, my friends, it said. And then it disappeared into the sky, leaving behind a trail of sparkling light. The two friends sat there, staring at each other in silence. Finally, Milo said, So, are we really doing this? Rotzi stood up and brushed off his clothes. Of course, we are. If we can scare away bullies, we can handle whatever's in the forest. Come on. And with that, the two friends started their journey into the deep, dark woods. The trees stood tall like giants, their branches twisting together to block out most of the sunlight. It was quiet, except for the sound of their footsteps and the occasional rustle of leaves. This place feels different, Milo whispered, looking around. Like it's watching us. Stop trying to scare me, Rotzi said, though his voice was shaky. We're just looking for a feather. How hard can it be? As they walked deeper, the air grew cooler, and strange shapes appeared in the shadows. Suddenly, a loud roar echoed through the forest. Both boys froze. Did you hear that? Rotzi whispered. Of course, I did, Milo replied, his eyes wide. And I really hope that's not the very big thing the bird was talking about. Before they could decide whether to move forward or run away, the ground shook. From behind a cluster of trees, a huge bear stepped out. But this wasn't an ordinary bear. Its fur shimmered like silver, and its eyes glowed a soft blue. Around its neck hung a golden chain, and on the chain was a glowing feather. "The feather!" Rotsy gasped. The bear growled deeply, its massive paws thudding against the ground as it came closer. "Who dares enter my forest?" it rumbled. Its voice was low and powerful, shaking the leaves above them. Milo stepped forward, though his legs felt like jelly. "We're sorry to bother you, Mr. Bear," he stammered. "We're just trying to find the feather of joy." The bear's glowing eyes narrowed. "You think joy comes for free? If you want this feather, you must prove your courage. Face my test." "Test?" Rotsy asked nervously. "What kind of test?" The bear raised one giant paw and pointed to a narrow, winding path that disappeared into the trees. "At the end of this path lies a pool of water, but the pool is guarded by a creature of shadows. If you can bring me water from the pool, you will earn the feather." Milo and Rotsy exchanged worried glances. "A creature of shadows?" Milo muttered. "That sounds worse than the bear." The bear rumbled with laughter. "Do not be afraid, little ones. Remember, true courage comes from facing your fears together." Rotsy gulped but nodded. "We can do this," he said, gripping Milo's arm. "Right?" Milo sighed and smiled weakly. "I guess we don't have a choice." The two friends stepped onto the narrow path, their hearts pounding. The deeper they went, the darker it became, until they could barely see in front of them. Strange whispers filled the air, making it hard to tell which way to go. Then, out of the darkness, a pair of glowing red eyes appeared. A low, menacing voice growled, "Who dares to disturb my pool?" Milo cleared his throat, his voice shaking a little as he began. "Once upon a time, there was a very hungry shadow. It wanted to eat something but couldn't figure out what shadows eat, so it went around asking everyone in the forest. First, it asked a rabbit, 'Hey, rabbit, what do shadows eat?' The rabbit said, 'Carrots, of course.' But the shadow tried to eat a carrot and realized it just went right through it. The shadow creature stared at Milo, its glowing red eyes narrowing. And then what happened? It growled." Milo continued, gaining a little more confidence. "Then the shadow asked a bird, 'Hey, bird, what do shadows eat?' The bird said, 'Worms. Shadows love worms.' So the shadow tried to eat a worm, but guess what? The worm slid right through too." Rotsy was trying not to laugh now, but the shadow creature still didn't seem amused. It leaned closer, its misty claws curling. "This had better get funnier," it rumbled. Milo gulped and finished quickly. Finally, the shadow asked an owl, "What do shadows eat?" And the owl said, "You don't need to eat, silly. Shadows are made of nothing, so they can eat nothing." The shadow was so embarrassed it ran away, and it's probably still running. Rotsy couldn't hold it in anymore. He burst out laughing, clutching his sides. To their surprise, the shadow creature tilted its head back and let out a deep, rumbling laugh that echoed through the forest. "That was ridiculous," it said, shaking its misty body. "But it was funny. You've earned the water." The creature stepped aside, revealing a small, shimmering pool of water surrounded by glowing rocks. "Take what you need," it said. Milo and Rotsy hurried forward, filling a small bottle they'd brought along with the sparkling water. As soon as they had it, the shadow creature vanished, leaving behind only a faint swirl of mist. Rotsy let out a huge sigh of relief. "That was close," he said. "I thought it was going to eat us." "Me too," Milo admitted, wiping sweat from his forehead. "But hey, we made it. Let's get this water back to the bear." With the bottle of water safely in hand, the two friends turned and began walking back along the narrow path. The forest seemed brighter now, and the strange whispers had disappeared. When they reached the clearing, the silver bear was waiting for them. Its glowing eyes softened as it saw the water. "You have done well," it said. "You faced your fears and worked together. That is the first lesson of joy." The bear reached up and gently took the glowing feather from its chain. It placed the feather in Milo's hands, and a warm light surrounded the two friends. They felt a strange happiness fill their hearts, as if all the teasing and mean words they'd ever heard no longer mattered. "The first feather is yours," said the bear, "but your journey is not over. The second feather lies in the mountains, where the winds are strong and the air is thin. Be careful, for the next lesson will test your kindness." Milo and Rotsy exchanged determined looks. "We're ready," Rotsy said. "Yeah," added Milo, "bring on the mountains." And so, with the first feather in hand, the two friends began the next part of their adventure. Not knowing what challenges awaited them ahead, Milo and Rotsy clung to each other, their knees trembling. But Rotsy took a deep breath and shouted, "We're not here to disturb anything. We just need some water to help a friend." The creature growled again, stepping into the faint light. Its body was made of swirling black mist, with sharp claws that seemed to cut through the air. "If you want the water, you must give me something in return," it said. Milo's mind raced. "What can we give it?" He whispered to Rotsy. "We don't have anything." Rotsy thought for a moment, then said, "Maybe we don't need things. Maybe we can give it something else, like a story or a promise." The creature tilted its head as if it had heard Rotsy's thoughts. "A story?" it hissed. "Interesting. Tell me a story that makes me laugh, and I will let you take the water." Rotsy looked at Milo. "You're the funny one. Do something." Milo's heart raced, but he took a deep breath and stepped forward. "All right, Shadow Guy," he said. "Here's a story for you." And so, with the first feather in hand, the two friends began the next part of their adventure, heading toward the distant mountains. The path was rocky and steep, and the wind howled through the trees, tugging at their clothes. But Milo and Rotsy kept walking, taking turns carrying their small bag of supplies. "This wind is no joke," Rotsy said, shielding his face with his hands. "I feel like it's trying to push us back." "Well, that just means we're going the right way," Milo replied with a grin, though his legs were aching from the climb. After hours of walking, they finally reached the base of the mountains. Towering peaks stretched up into the clouds, their tops dusted with snow. The wind was even stronger now, whistling loudly around them. As they began climbing the narrow trail that twisted up the mountainside, they spotted something strange in the distance, a small wooden hut perched on a ledge. "Do you think someone lives there?" Rotsy asked. "Only one way to find out," Milo said, leading the way. As they got closer, they saw smoke rising from the chimney. The hut looked old and a little crooked, but warm light glowed through its small windows. They knocked on the door, and a wrinkled old woman opened it. She wore a thick cloak and had a kind face, but her eyes seemed tired. "What brings two young ones like you all the way up here?" she asked, her voice creaky but gentle. "We're looking for the second feather of joy," Rotsy explained. "A magical bird sent us on this journey." The woman nodded slowly, as if she understood. Yes. I've heard of the feathers. You're brave to come this far. But tell me, are you ready to face the next test?" Milo hesitated. "What kind of test is it?" The woman stepped aside, motioning for them to come in. "It's a test of kindness," she said. Inside, the hut was warm and cozy, with a fire crackling in the fireplace and a pot of soup bubbling on the stove. The woman sat down at a small table and gestured for them to join her. "Kindness isn't always easy," she said. "Sometimes it means helping others even when you have little to give. Sometimes it means listening even when you're tired. Do you think you can do that?" Milo and Rotsy nodded. "We'll try our best," Rotsy said. The woman smiled. "Good. Your test begins now." She pointed to a small, battered chest sitting in the corner of the room. "Inside the chest is something you will need for your journey. But to open it, you must earn the key." "How do we do that?" Milo asked. The woman stood up and handed them a basket. "There is a village on the other side of the mountain," she said. "The people there are struggling. Take this basket of bread and share it with them. Along the way, you may find others who need your help as well. Be kind, even when it's hard, and the key will find its way to you." Milo and Rotsy exchanged a look. "We'll do it," Milo said firmly. "Good," the woman said. "And remember, kindness comes back to you even when you don't expect it." With that, the two friends set off again, the basket of bread carefully tucked under Rotsy's arm. The trail grew even steeper, and the wind bit at their faces, but they pressed on, determined to complete their task. After a while, they came across a small, shivering goat stuck in a patch of thorny bushes. Its bleats were weak, and its fur was tangled with sharp thorns. "Poor thing," Rotsy said, setting the basket down. "We have to help it." "But how?" Milo asked. "We don't have anything to cut the thorns." Rotsy thought for a moment, then pulled off his scarf. "I'll wrap it around my hands. Maybe I can push the thorns aside." Carefully, Rotsy worked to free the goat, while Milo kept watch for any dangers. It took a long time, but finally, the goat was free. It nuzzled Rotsy's hand gratefully, and he gave it a small piece of bread. "Go on, little guy," Milo said, patting the goat gently. "Be careful out here." As they continued their journey, something amazing happened. A soft golden light appeared in the air, swirling around them. When it faded, a small golden key lay in the basket. "The key!" Rotsy exclaimed. "We did it!" But Milo shook his head. "Not yet. We still have to share the bread with the village." They smiled at each other and kept walking, ready to face whatever came next. Milo and Rotzi continued down the mountain, the golden key safely tucked in their basket. As they descended, the air grew warmer, and soon they could see the small village nestled in a green valley. Smoke rose from chimneys, but the streets were eerily quiet, and the houses looked worn and lifeless. When they reached the village square, they saw tired-looking villagers sitting silently, their faces pale and hopeless. Children sat in the dirt too weak to play, and no one even looked up as the two friends approached. "Why is everyone so sad?" Rotzi whispered. "I don't know," Milo said, "but we have to help." They stepped forward and called out, "Hello, we've brought bread to share." At first, no one reacted, but when the smell of the fresh bread reached them, the villagers slowly turned their heads. One by one, the people approached, their eyes wide with hunger and curiosity. Milo and Rotzi handed out the bread, piece by piece, making sure everyone got a share. The children's faces lit up as they bit into the warm bread, and soon, smiles began to spread through the crowd. As they finished giving out the bread, an old man with a long white beard approached them. "Thank you, young ones," he said, his voice trembling. "We had almost forgotten what kindness feels like." "Why did you help us?" Rotzi smiled. "Because it's the right thing to do. Everyone deserves a little kindness." Suddenly, the golden key in their basket began to glow brightly. It floated into the air and pointed back toward the mountains. Milo and Rotzi looked at each other, understanding what they had to do. They said goodbye to the villagers and hurried back to the old woman's hut. When they arrived, she was waiting for them, a proud smile on her face. "You've done well," she said. "You've learned that kindness can light up even the darkest places." She handed them the small chest. "Now, use the key." Milo inserted the golden key into the lock and turned it. The chest clicked open, and inside was the second feather of joy, glowing a bright, cheerful yellow. As soon as they touched it, a warm light surrounded them, filling their hearts with a sense of peace and happiness. "You're closer to completing your journey," the woman said. "The final feather lies in a desert far to the east. It will test your patience, for true joy is not rushed, it grows slowly, like a seed." Milo and Rotzi nodded, ready for whatever lay ahead. They thanked the old woman and set off once more, holding the two feathers tightly. The path to the desert would be long and difficult, but they knew that as long as they stuck together, they could overcome anything. And so, their adventure continued, with one last feather waiting to be found.